Now to the war in Ukraine. It turns out Russia may have a secret partner, South Africa. There's a storm brewing in Pretoria. The US envoy to South Africa made an explosive claim. He says South Africa is arming Russia. Listen to this.
The government of South Africa is in fact not aligned. Amongst the things that we noted were the docking of the Russian cargo ship Lady R in Simonstown between December 6th and December 8th, 2022, which we are confident uploaded weapons, ammunition onto that vessel in Simonstown as it made its way back to Russia, which does not suggest to us the actions of a non-aligned country.
He says the US is confident that weapons and ammunition were uploaded on the Russian ship. Where did he say this happened? At Simonstown, near Cape Town, home to South Africa's largest naval base. Now, this is a very serious allegation. South Africa claims to be a neutral country in this war. It has refused to condemn Moscow's invasion. It says dialogue is the only way to resolve the conflict. Now, America says it is arming Russia. How do you think they responded? Not with a denial. President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the South African parliament yesterday. He said the matter was being looked into and that South Africa will be able to speak about it, quote unquote, in time. That doesn't sound good at all. It's a diplomatic nightmare for the allegedly neutral country. Meanwhile, the US has welcomed Ramaphosa's probe.
It certainly would be a welcome step, but again, the deeply concerning piece of this is the docking of a sanctioned Russian vessel at a South African naval port.
And while Russia's supposed covert ally is being grilled, Ukraine's allies are sending weapons non-stop. The UK will send the Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. What are these? Long-range missiles. This makes the UK the first country to send such weapons to Ukraine. British Defence Minister Ben Wallace spoke about it yesterday.
Today I can confirm that the UK is donating Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. Storm Shadow is a long-range, conventional-only precision strike capability. It complements the long-range systems already gifted, including HIMARS and Harpoon missiles, as well as Ukraine's own Neptune cruise missile and longer-range missions elsewhere gifted. The donation of these weapon systems gives Ukraine the best chance to defend themselves against Russia's continued brutality.
He was quick to add that the Storm Shadows complement other long-range systems. Now, it makes it seem like this is not an escalation, but like I said, the UK is the first country to give long-range missiles to Kiev. It's something Ukrainian President Zelensky has been asking for a while now. The Storm Shadow missiles can hit targets 250 kilometers away. That's almost double the range of the Harpoon missiles that Wallace compared them with. So it definitely marks a new stage in the war. There's been a lot of talk about a spring counteroffensive. Zelensky is likely hoping to stock up weapons before that. Both nations, Russia and Ukraine, were waiting for winter to end before the next phase of intense fighting. Zelensky has not given the go-ahead yet, but in a recent interview, he portrayed confidence. Let me quote from what he said. "With what we have, we can go forward and be successful. But we'd lose a lot of people. I think that's unacceptable. So we need to wait. We still need a bit more time." Is that false bravado or an accurate assessment? We'll see in the coming months. But there are indications that Russia may be faltering. The biggest battleground is still Bakhmut, a city in eastern Ukraine. Russians have been claiming success for the last few weeks. The battle is being led by Yevgeny Prigozhin. He is the leader of Russia's Wagner mercenary group. Last month, he said he had captured the city of Bakhmut. Now it turns out that Bakhmut is still not in Russia's control. Ukraine says Russian troops are pulling back, and the Wagner chief did threaten to pull back a few days ago. He said Russia was not giving him enough weapons to fight, and he will ask his men to withdraw. He even released a video purportedly showing his dead fighters. Later, he said the army was sending supplies, but only a tenth of what had been promised. Yesterday, he said Ukraine was winning the Battle of Bakhmut. Well, that's also what Ukraine is saying. The Wagner chief is blaming the Russian military for all of this. He says that a Russian army unit fled the front lines, that they were given quote-unquote criminal orders from the military top brass. Honestly, it's hard to ascertain the truth, but this infighting has been going on for a while. It's the Wagner Group versus the Russian military. They were supposed to be fighting as one team. Now they're fighting each other, and it doesn't bode well for Russia. Now let's talk about Twitter. Owner Elon Musk is making headlines again. It seems after 5 months, he's abiding by the results of his December Twitter poll. He's finally stepping down as CEO. He tweeted the news yesterday. So who will be his successor? Well, he dropped a hint. Musk said, and I'm quoting, "She will be starting in 6 weeks." So a woman. But who is the she? He did not say, and speculation has been on since. Most observers are betting on one name, Linda Yaccarino, the head of advertising at NBC Universal. The Wall Street Journal says she is the next chief twit. But who is this woman? And will she be able to steady the ship at Twitter? More importantly, what will Musk do once she takes over? Here's a report.
It's finally happening. Elon Musk is stepping down as Twitter CEO. He's passing on the mantle of chief twit. He made the announcement in this Twitter post yesterday. He says she will be starting in 6 weeks. But who is his chosen successor? Who will the Twitter crown pass on to? Apparently, this person. Her name is Linda Yaccarino. She's the head of advertising for the media company NBC Universal. That's the media house that owns Universal Studios, DreamWorks, and MSNBC, among a host of other things. Yaccarino has been working with NBC Universal since 2011, mostly in advertising and partnerships. She's been credited with monetizing NBC's vast network of properties. Basically, she's a top advertising executive, so it makes sense that she might become Twitter CEO. Because the platform could really use her expertise. Twitter has been hemorrhaging advertisers since Musk bought it last year. A lot of the platform's old clients weren't happy with Musk's devil-may-care approach, especially his offers of amnesty to people that had been banned, like Kanye West. The rapper, who now goes by the name Ye, was allowed back on Twitter last November, and he promptly went on to post anti-Semitic comments. He was booted again soon after, but the damage was done, which has mostly been Musk's approach to the platform, regarding hate speech at least. He lets the bigots back and then watches them get kicked off again, but not before they end up spreading vitriol. And that's what advertisers had a problem with. No one wants their ads to feature right after a hate tweet. Top advertisers like Coca-Cola, Unilever, Jeep, and Wells Fargo had pulled their ads by January. Ad revenue was down by over 60%. Musk was scrambling for other sources of income. He tried to push Twitter Blue, the paid subscription option on the app. It was launched, relaunched, and relaunched again globally. But reports say it hasn't made much of an impact. So maybe that's why Musk is looking at Linda Yaccarino to succeed him. She understands the ad business, and she spent years working with advertisers. Maybe she can get them to overlook Musk's chaotic antics, and perhaps restart Twitter's tried and tested revenue stream. But what will Musk do 6 weeks from now when his successor arrives? Go back to looking after his other companies, like electric vehicle maker Tesla, or private rocket firm SpaceX, or brain chip company Neuralink? Musk does have other things to keep him occupied. But it doesn't look like he's done with his $44 billion purchase just yet. Look at his tweet again. He says he will transition into being Twitter's executive chairperson and chief technology officer. Well, that's what CTO is supposed to stand for. You'd never really know with Musk, though. He says after the new CEO arrives, he will still be overseeing product, software, and sysops. Sounds quite hands-on. What happens if there's a power struggle? Will the CEO be able to fire the billionaire? We'll probably find out sooner rather than later. Twitter has had 5 CEOs in 17 years. Will the 6th one be able to rescue the social media giant and survive Musk?
Now let's turn our attention to the US. It has a serious drug shortage. It has hit cancer treatment medication the hardest. These record shortages have reached a 5-year high, and the problem is not only the lack of medicines, the problem is also their quality. They're of poor quality. There are growing concerns. Patients are being impacted every day, and families, which are already going through a medical crisis, are also now suffering additional emotional trauma. Anger is mounting against the Biden administration. What does the US president propose to do to address this? Here's a report.
The drug supply in the US is sick. Chronic problems are hurting it. There are drug shortages, which have reached a 5-year high. Cancer treatment drugs are among the hardest hit, and most drugs are facing supply problems. Americans are struggling to find something as common as antibiotics. But the issue is not limited to shortages. There are lapses in safety as well. Like in the case of eye drops causing infections, they've made some users permanently blind, and in one case, led to the death of a person. But these problems aren't new. America has been facing these problems for the last few years. The US government first noticed them in 2021, and they've been trying to fight it since then. But trying is the key word here, because much progress hasn't been made. The hits to drug supply are only increasing. People's anger is mounting, but no real changes have been seen. Now, reports say the US government is trying something different. The Biden administration has put together a secret task force. Why secret? Because they've been taking these steps quietly. Too much information isn't available, except that the team is comprised of a group of White House officials, and they have two primary goals: increasing the availability of drugs and the quality of medicines. President Joe Biden's top domestic policy officer is the driving force behind this team. Her name is Susan Rice, and she's been meeting the team frequently since around the beginning of this year. In theory, this sounds like a team of superheroes assembling to tackle this drug crisis, but the reality is a tad bit different. Rice is leaving her post this month, and her initial plan was to chalk out a strategy before she does. She had asked the team to finalize proposals by early spring, but clearly that hasn't happened. The group missed that deadline. They struggled to reach a consensus, which is not surprising. This is a complex pharmaceutical problem. There's a lack of funding in the system. And even if changes are to be brought, bureaucracy stands in the way. Changes have to be agreed upon by the White House, which is time-consuming. The problem has persisted for so long that it has harmed drug makers too. Due to the problems in supply, they've been driven out of business, which has further aggravated the crisis. But while this team waits to reach a conclusion, the problem is only growing. Drug shortages increased by nearly 30% between 2021 and 2022. Currently, there are more than 300 types of drugs with an active shortage. 50 of these have been added to the list in the past 3 months, and this list includes medications for cancer, ADHD, and respiratory diseases. 9 out of 10 oncologists say the shortage of medication is directly harming patients, even leading to their deaths. The situation is clearly fatal. The US government seems like it's trying to resolve the problem, but time is running out. People are being deprived of the care they deserve, and this crisis is only getting worse by the day. So while the government may be preparing for a storm, they should know that it's already here.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We start on an inspiring note. Cambodian runner Bu Sam Nang lost a race, but won the hearts of many. She was finishing last in the women's 5,000-meter final at Southeast Asian Games, but determined, she finished the race despite torrential rain. Meanwhile, Swedish climate activists threw red paint on the finance ministry building. They want the government to stop funding fossil fuels. And for Mexican migrants waiting for asylum in the US, it's a case of border divides, but pizza unites. Migrants waiting on the US side of the border order food from restaurants on the Mexican side. And finally, what happened in history today on the 12th of May? The year was 1943. During World War II, a German commander in North Africa surrendered after the famous Battle of El Alamein. The North Africans surprised the German forces with their brute resolve and pushed them out. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday.
This is the film record of the closing stages of the last battle in Africa, where they surrendered in droves. This is nearing the climax of the greatest German setback since Stalingrad. This time the newsreel camera goes over with a number of flying fortresses. This is a very small incident in the non-stop blitzing of Italian targets from North Africa.
email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.